you are. I didn't see you, but now I do. This is Peter Godinez with KDY TV, your ambassador with another segment of Good Morning Oxnard. We're here at the wonderful Tomas Cafe, my favorite place for breakfast, I might add. And then also, who I have in front of me represents the Citizens Journal.us. And make sure you check them out on Citizen Journal DC on Facebook if you're a Facebook fan. But once again, George has some information from last night. How late was it for you last night?
About 11:30 roughly.
Whoa, whoa, so the streetlights were on. So anyway, George, there were some interesting things happening. Would you share with our audience what took place last night?
Oh, Ambassador Peter, I can address your subjects.
There's some other ambassadors you're telling me about.
There are. Well, speaking of ambassadors, we had a really impressive event on Saturday. It was the Ambassadors of Peace March and Rally. And it was put together by a group that was formed after a meeting with the police department discussing the causes of violence and what to do about it. And as you know, we've had some other demonstrations in town and protests by fringe groups that really weren't so willing to work with the different stakeholders in the community. This is a little bit different this time. Now, I have to admit, I'm a cynical old New Yorker. When I see still another peace march, I'm thinking, kumbaya, you know. This was a little different. I gotta admit, it was a little different.
How was it different? Tell us.
Well, here's how it's different. First of all, it was organized by faith-based community. Now, not everyone's into the faith-based community, but whether or not you're a child of God, you have to admit that what they're doing is positive stuff for the community. And we had the Foursquare Church, and we had Reverend Greg Runyon, who was on this show last week to explain
check the archives
what his aim. Go back to the archives a week ago and listen to Greg's story. And Greg is somewhat remarkable is that he was a drugged-out addict on the street who did a hard time years ago in Northern California. He's cleaned up his act, and now he's a minister at the church right around the corner from here. And his congregation are the most disadvantaged in society. They are drunks, drug addicts, cons, gang members. Those are the people that he helps. Right? So he was just one of several people that came together. There's a lady that came stumbling into a city council meeting a few months ago, Vera Vega.
Vera Vega.
Vera Vega, right? Now, Vera Vega was one of the ringleaders of this event. This is someone that never did anything before. All of a sudden, she's at the city council meeting, scared to death to get up and talk in front of 60 people about how upset she is about the gangs and the violence and that she wants to do something. So she became one of the organizers of the event. Frida Wiggins was the person that actually pulled together the Ambassadors of Peace Oxnard chapter. Pastor Vega, another local fellow a lot of people know, was one of the organizers as well. And Chief Williams from the police department did everything she could to make this event a success. I do mean everything. So what happened? Well, they met in Colonia, which was no accident because Colonia is the site of a lot of the violence in the community. 99% of people in Colonia are not violent, and 1% do cause a little problem. So they decided to march very conspicuously through Colonia, over the bridge on 3rd Street, right through past City Hall, past here, and over to Plaza Park, where they had a rally to talk about what they want to do. Well, the question is, what do they really want to do? It's not just about a march. There was quite a few organizations there displaying their wares, and those wares entailed anything from a Head Start program for 3-year-olds to get them on the right foot way before they ever think about gangs, all the way into a prison reentry back to society program sponsored by Eileen Tracy with the local Episcopal Church. And in between there, they had various counseling organizations, training organizations, the PL organization. What they were trying to do is show people, these are the establishments, the institutions we can use to help kids get them on the right track so they don't become statistics in the police reports that you see in Citizens Journal.
Yeah.
So I have to give them plaudits for that. I really do.
I want to give you an applaud for the article that George wrote, multidimensional. Again, I have to do a shout out, as I'm famous for doing, for Mr. and Mrs. Nyhoff. Great dressing up as a cowboy hat, glasses, and I guess a little hard to recognize until
it is. Well, the soccer star, excuse me, volleyball star wife.
Yeah, no, I just said Mr. and Mrs. Nyhoff and son. I guess he had
one of his sons was there as well.
So there's lots of things. I noticed that police took Jerry Williams actually used the blowhorn.
The bullhorn.
So interesting event. Lots of significant people. And we can expect some change.
I think you know, it's a continuum. It's not like it's yesterday we had nothing, today we have that. A lot of these programs have been underway for years, but not well utilized. There are other programs that weren't represented there last night. For example, a few weeks ago, we had Mrs. Pinkert in here and talk about her academy to train kids coming out of high school and get them into better careers and stuff like that. So there's a whole bunch. You know, it was one of the President Bush's talked about 1,000 points of light.
Yeah.
Right? And this is part of the 1,000 points of light approach, really.
You know, I agree. A little bit brighter spotlight of it, but it was a very well organized event, and we thank you for covering it. And again, if you get a chance on citizenjournal.us, check the article out. I think you'll be quite pleased.
Right. Well, it's KADY policy to always try to start off these things on a positive note. Now we have to tell you some of the good news, bad news coming up.
Let's go for it.
Last night, the city handed out millions of dollars of consulting money again. We have some big problems. Everyone knows that. We've talked about our $11 million deficit. We've talked about unfunded liabilities. We've talked about all kinds of laws being broken. We've had 3 city managers in the last several years. But it's catching up with us right now. Part of that $11 million deficit is that the city is spending literally millions of dollars to use consultants to help run the city and clean up the mess left by previous administrations. Last night, several things happened. First of all, another $500,000 in monies were approved and basically given as a blank check to our city manager, Greg Neithoff, who we were just complimenting a minute ago, to spend as he sees fit to meet over 100 deficiencies which were uncovered in the audit. And some of them are legal, some of them are operational, some of them are social, but it's beyond the capability of the existing city managers and staffs to meet. So we're using outside consultants such as management partners, selective legal operations, Rennie Sloan, which is our HR consultant, who's cleaned up a lot of the mess, but this is really expensive. Now, Mr. Neithoff pointed out that's partly offset by the many vacancies we have. Right now, 21% of the jobs are vacant in the city compared to what the organization chart says. Some by design, because we simply don't have the money, so they're deliberately not filling them, but there's a consequence of not filling them. And probably the worst areas for that are in the HR department, the financial department, the water department, and the wastewater. In wastewater and water, we have had no real utilities manager now for 2.5 years. That position has been vacant. We have 9 extremely important technical and managerial slots that are open, and they're now all being filled by 2 different outside consultants. ACOM, which we just appropriated another $2.7 million for consulting fees, and they are basically running the wastewater department, water department, and KEH services, another $1.389 million, and they're performing a similar function. And nothing wrong with those firms at all. They're wonderful firms, but boy, they sure are expensive. And it's roughly twice as expensive as having employees in those slots to get the job done. Plus, when they leave, we don't have the skills to manage those departments. And it's really very little more important for a city to do than manage infrastructure, and water and wastewater are the most important parts of that infrastructure. So basically this was a fait accompli given to the council. Approve these things or sewage is on the streets and you have no water. You know, that's basically the way it was presented last time.
So when you say bad news, and I'm being neutral about this, the bad news is that it's costing more in perception. They're using resources, they're not community members, so to speak, taxpayers maybe. Maybe they're outside of the area.
The good news is they're fixing the problem.
Right.
At least they're dealing with the problem. They're not fixing the problem. The underlying problem, the consultants leave, the underlying problem is still there. However, they are doing some good things. They are writing policies and procedures and putting them in place where none existed before, although those that did exist were obsolete. And to some extent, they're training people that are there. But if there are not enough qualified people there to receive that training, then that is lost.
Right. I'm
a former consultant myself, and it's very frustrating to come into a company and train people who were underqualified or vacant positions that when I left, my knowledge was not transferred to the company. Therefore, the investment was wasted.
So that's like a pathway that could happen, but there is a pathway that says consultants come in, they're more, but they make an impact.
Right. Well, but yeah, here's the bottom line. 2.5 years, that position's still open, and Nighthawk's been in office 11 months, and we still have no utilities director. So that falls upon the city. You know, there's an old story, you can blame your predecessor for just a certain amount of time, right? And he's about reached the end of the honeymoon period.
You know, so when they say they don't have somebody filled, there's always somebody interim, or like for instance, I won't mention the name, but they're actually doing 2 major jobs with the city.
Yes.
And so is that happening with the water district as well? Is there an interim?
It is. The people have been thrown in there. For example, Rob Roshanian was thrown in there, and he was the acting public works manager for a long time, and he did not have the tools of the people, and they brought him back to his old job, and now they have other people in it. So it's been awful fluid. No, they don't really have a really acting person in there as a full-fledged director. So people from other departments are in there. Right?
Now, are any of these consultants local? That's my last question.
I don't know where they live.
Okay.
One of the things I mentioned last night is, you know, you've got to try to hire some of these consultants, even if you have to pay an employment fee to the firm. If those are really good qualified people, they're in place and they know the city, they'll hire them.
Maybe you just create another option, you know.
Yeah, right. Or
you know that, right? We might
so that's the consulting situation. Okay, also, Oxnard is attempting to get grants from the new Proposition 1 that was passed last year, the so-called water bond, $7.5 billion water bond, only of which $2.5 billion is actually going to water, by the way. And the city is trying to get their grips on some of that. Evidently, there is a fund called the Clean Water State Revolving Fund that basically rewards water recycling efforts, and the city is trying to get some of that money directed to their recycling programs. The city has really good recycling programs, by the way.
And hopefully good grant writers.
I hope so too. We really need the money. Right. We were supposed to have a treasurer's report last night that was postponed due to the absence of the treasurer, but there was not an absence of discussion. Al Velasquez asked why it shows that we have only $98 million in the treasury when the previous report showed a different amount, like $123 million. What's the difference? And he and other people also asked, well, why isn't some of that money used for the $16 million loan that the city wants to make, rather than taking that of the Measure O and the Water Department fund, which would deplete those funds, by the way. Very good questions.
Yeah. Any answers, or just
no answers? Basically,
interesting.
It was continued to next week when our treasurer is back. She wasn't there to speak for herself last night.
Any reason why she wasn't there? Personal reasons?
Personal reasons. Okay. That was the reason.
Okay.
So I have no idea. Right. Well, last night they finally approved the Oxnard Beach repairs and enhancements to the parking lot and the installation of new parking machines to raise revenue. Everyone loves that beach. It's a great place, and it's very well utilized for big events, little events, and stuff like that. So there was really no contest about approving the money. Also last night, the downtown management district funding was done by the city, which is about $100,000 a year of their $454,000 a year budget. And if you walk around downtown, it looks a lot better than it did 15 years ago.
There's no doubt.
And
no doubt.
Part of that is that the city has made a lot of efforts, and a downtown management group was formed and is self-funding to a large extent to do things like cleaning the street, getting graffiti off, paying for extra police patrols. And it has shown up. It definitely looks better down here. And that was presented as a fait accompli also because the city had previously approved the entire thing in concept. Last night was just the funding of that, so it was approved unanimously also. Last night also the city approved a 5-year, $3 million contract for fuel and car washes. They gave it to Shell, which is the most expensive gas station in town. Don't ask me. But they are getting a 2.6%.
It's a whole different section.
They are getting a 2.6% discount. It's still more expensive than Marco or USA. I'm sure there's wisdom behind that.
Yes.
But one good thing about Shell is they have a very good computerized accounting system for tracking receipts and creating reports for the city and stuff like that, uncovering things like misuse of funds. They also do car washes. Now, I found out that contract does not include the fire department, which has a separate contract. This is interesting. The fire department has its own massive storage tanks, so they always have a supply, and they even have a backup generator to pump the fuel in case the power is out too. So the fire department can run no matter what, and they're on a separate contract from the rest of the city. Interesting thing, a lot of the city vehicles are moving to CNG rather than fuel oil or gasoline. The good news about CNG is it costs roughly half to move a vehicle on CNG as it does in gasoline. And all the new $300,000 garbage trucks we were complaining about last week all use CNG, and the garbage trucks are the largest consumers of fuel except for the fire department. Now, the question is, where do you get the CNG? Well, CNG is natural gas, and you can't just take the gas line from your house and fuel it up, because you need a pump to create a lot more pressure to fuel it, so you need special fueling facilities. We do not have those fueling facilities in town right now.
What do they have to do outside of town?
Well, actually, Mr. Henderson talked about developing infrastructure doing that. As he did that, Councilman McDonald, who's on the transportation community, said, hey, I have an idea. We're building a new transportation center up in Auto Center Drive. Why not cut a deal with them and use their facility and split the expense?
Wow.
Brilliant.
Talk about quick solutions.
That was really, really
way
good.
to go, Brian.
Everyone kind of like went, aha.
Aha.
That was really good. Right. So last thing, I want to give you advance notice this year. The Salsa Festival is going to be...
I heard you're signing up to dance. Is that true?
Yeah, I'll have to dance. Right. July 25th and 26th and with my Latino soul.
I'd like to nominate Bob Allen and find him and Elaine, his wife, I think would win it.
I think that would be pretty hot.
Sorry, keep on going.
No, it's with professional dancing, so I would have to have a beautiful woman, you know, anytime.
I'm not touching that one.
Our producer speaks.
That's Bob, that's not God speaking down to us.
All right. Well, that kind of wraps it up for this week on Good Morning Oxnard. Ambassador?
Oh, thank you very much. Seems like we're growing a few ambassadors in the area, and every time I do one of these sections with George, I want to plead with the people who actually are watching to pass this on to other people, because not everybody can stay up till midnight. Like
oh, really? Yeah. I do weird things at night when I get home from meetings. I want to give a little tip to the viewers. Go on Google and Google Xerox Ambassador.
Okay, and you'll see many funny things.
You'll see many funny things. Actually, Peter is the Xerox online ambassador.
The face is Xerox.
I've learned a lot from watching those videos.
You know, it's amazing, and to build on that, I encourage you to share it with your friends so people in the community are educated at what's going on. And I think the more people that are educated, I think the better this community will be. So with that, I bid you farewell. Have a great day. And this is Peter Godinez, your ambassador. Good morning, Oxnard. Until next time.